Everyone, welcome. Yes, hello now. Welcome to Bible study. As you can see, we still have a few minutes, so we're going to let people come in. I was asking people whether they thought this picture was a picture of a tapestry or of an old card or something. I'm not really sure, but I heard some guesses.
Like a tapestry.
So. I think tapestry, you can almost see thread work, but I'm not certain.
Looks like something out of an almanac.
Trying to think back on some of the. There was a joke book that a couple of the confirmation students brought earlier today, and I took a couple of things from that. There's a couple of really bad knock jokes. Here's the ones that I can remember. Knock knock.
Who's there?
Yeah.
Noah.
No.
If you don't know who's knocking, don't open the door. Knock knock.
Who's there?
Isaiah.
Isaiah who?
I say again, open the door. And I'll say here's the really bad one is this is the terrible one that why does God love bald people?
Why?
Well, God said every hair on your head is numbered, so bald people make his job easier.
Oh.
Yep.
I'd say the other one I can say that's related to this, which we might get into later, is I saw it when I was looking through and getting videos and stuff connected. It's not in this one, but the way someone started their conversation on Gnosticism, which we're going to talk about a little bit later with the ancient heritage of Gnosticism, is he said, Gnostics are like hipsters. You wouldn't get it. It's with them well, but with that, it is just about
What?
7 o'clock. That's how
I'm a little slow.
No worries, that's kind of how Gnostics work, is if you don't get it already, then you wouldn't get it. But it is just about 7 o'clock, so we can probably start with how to respond to the New Age movement. Now we're actually going to be looking at the first 2 chapters of the book here by Lachas, and I'm butchering his last name, but Lachas, how to respond to the New Age movement here. I've heard from a few people now that the first chapter is a rather interesting read. Don't worry, we're going to cover over a lot of it as the first thing, just to go over what's being talked about and what's being explained here. So, but before we begin, I have a couple questions that I would have liked to ask in the first one, but I like having some physical people to answer these questions too. You guys can answer online and everything. Hello to everyone who's online. But to have a little more of the back and forth, before we begin, what did you know about the New Age movement before the Bible study last week, or before reading the chapters for today? Did you know anything about the New Age movement, or anything connected to that?
Do I have to tell you what I knew?
If you don't want to.
The Age of Aquarius.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
song.
Age of
Remember the
Aquarius.
song?
Yeah. That I thought about that when I was reading this. Yeah. I noticed that, especially when we got chapter 2, I noticed that a lot of programs that were done in the 60s and the 70s, especially science fiction, were steeped in New Ageism.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Star Trek, Star Wars,
True.
Let the Force be with you.
Very much.
Yeah.
And permeating everything and connected to everything. Very much, yes. I know for my own sake, I barista at Barnes & Noble for several years, and there was at least one point where one of my fellow coworkers came to me and asked me my opinion, which would be the best set of tarot cards to buy from the store. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't think I can give you an answer to that question. But it's there. But yeah, so thinking through, it's around us, especially in media and in pop culture, that there's just a couple connections to a few things here and there. The Age of Aquarius is a big one. I grew up and I had heard that song growing up, and that's a song from, I think, the 70s at this point, 60s, 70s, so maybe even the 80s.
It was the 60s.
It was the 60s, okay,
Yeah, and
yeah.
The other thing that I am very familiar with is, I don't know how familiar you guys are to them, but where Andrew and I were, shortly after we were married, the place that we lived, I don't know if it was just, there were a lot of crystal shops.
Yes.
There were a lot of New Age kind of witchy kind of shops. And then the other thing they did is they actually called them New Age conferences, and they would advertise them on billboards that would say, like, you know, you can come get your aura read, and you can all of these kinds of things. And so it was very popular around where we were.
What was her name? There was some famous person. She was really into that.
What's
Shirley MacLaine.
Shirley MacLaine.
Yeah, Shirley MacLaine. Yeah.
Poor Vicar doesn't know who she is.
I know the name. But yeah. No, but it's definitely been around, like, especially in America, you can find it in a bunch of different places, but especially if you go East Coast, and especially if you go to the West Coast, you can find more of an influence of the New Age movement. There are different podcasts I've listened to in areas of people who are on the West Coast who just, it's all around them to the point where they talk about it without realizing they're talking about it. And so with that, and thinking about those connections, have you run into elements of the New Age movement in your own life? Whether those people that you've seen or in other places, if so, where, and if not, where do you think you would run into them?
Running, just for.
No, I had the good time first.
Well, we went to Salem, Massachusetts once
Oh,
around
boy.
Halloween.
Okay.
And so besides the normal, like, blocks and blocks of New Age, witchy kind of stores, there was a lot of extra things going on.
I see a lot of folks that, so I don't want to classify them, but you know, the holistic eating and clean lifestyle folks that they're very concerned with their horoscopes. They're very concerned with is Jupiter aligning with Saturn and all these kinds of things. And you run into those people quite frequently.
Oh, yes.
And I don't think they realize how far entrenched they are in this. But they'll talk about, you know, oh, now's not a good time to do this because the moon is out of whack or something like that.
Yeah, just kind of those kind of, and especially it is unfortunate, but it is often that healthy eating, healthy living, things that have a very strong focus on that. The New Age has latched onto that and had that be kind of part of their push. And so if you're connected to that in one place, you're often connected in other places. One kind of strange way that I ran into it in my own life, that as I'm thinking through it, there was a person who I was speaking to who, right from the beginning, she was one of my coworkers, and she was years and years back now. She was very clear that she was agnostic, but she still wanted to talk about what I believed, and so we were having that back and forth. And there was one point where she brought up, she's like, wouldn't it make more sense for a creator, someone who created everything to be female? Because that's how it works with everything, like with the rest of the world. Wouldn't it make more sense to that? I'm like, I'm not sure what logic you're putting here. I can almost see the logical steps you're taking, but we're not talking about, like, we don't have to deduce the creator from the logical steps. He told us who he is. And so, but it kind of comes from a similar idea of this is how we figure it out through clues of the universe, that like that woman who was speaking in the last week in the video that I had. But we can...
The last thing, I got one more.
Yes.
Self-help book sections at bookstores.
Oh, yes.
You know, every if you can get to a self-help book, you can find a New Age theory.
True. Very true, very true. All right. We can keep going to chapter 1, which she titled Old Lies for a New Age. Lackas goes over the fact that the New Age movement is not as new as it claims to be, and explains the distinction between the occult and humanist sides of the movement. So we'll go over that in chapters 3 and 4, which go into more detail. The basic idea between the occult and humanist side, before we go forward, is the occult side is looking more towards the horoscopes, more towards channeling, more towards the spirits, and those connections, crystals, whereas the humanist side is more about maybe even the healthy living, but what is the greatest of humanity's potential that we can reach to? That is the humanist side, is that humanity can save itself if we just realize our potential. Whereas the occult side is saying there are spirits and other things we can connect to.
It's kind of like building your own Tower of Babel.
To an extent. Yeah, that is a very strong connection, is, yeah, we can build this tower to be like God. And it goes all the way back to the Garden of Eden, is we can be like God. So Lackas gives 6 principles which he says form the roots from which the New Age philosophy grows. These 6 roots are different from the 6 indicators of the New Age movement that I showed last week. These deal with the underlying philosophical idea. So this is what they believe set up as points, whereas the 6 indicators were more about how they expressed themselves in conversation. We're going to go through these 6 roots, and each of these 6 roots fundamentally disagree with Scripture, as we can see by taking a closer look at them. So, for root number 1, all is one, therefore all is God. And this root is actually 2 different philosophical or theological ideas mashed together into one concept. The first one is monism, the idea that all is one. Everything is one thing, and there are only just different expressions of that. You can find that very much in Buddhism, in Hinduism, where the strong idea is you'll hear or you can see connected to people who are talking about like nirvana or enlightenment, that enlightenment isn't a new state of being, it's a realization of the state of being you were always in. That's how they'll explain it. It's a realization of what you truly are, not a new jump to a new place. And that's that idea that everything is connected. Everything is part of one thing. The second one that they have is pantheism, which is that all is God. God is connected to everything. Everything has a bit of God in it. You can find this, again, the New Age movement takes a lot of its influences from Eastern culture, and so you can find this in Shintoism, which is the Japanese culture, which is the idea that everything has a little bit of God in it. Everything has little bit of divinity in it. And so these are kind of the 2 movements that connect.
So how does that compare to the Christian belief that God is in everything?
The Christian belief that God is in everything is very different because we are not saying that God is everything. God is there, but he is a distinct entity. He is not a creature, he is the creator. And so creation is not a part of God, but God is in all of creation. And so the biggest difference here is that God in Christianity is an actual physical person, not some diffuse force, like you mentioned with Star Wars, or like some thing that just connects and binds all people together. He is a separate person from his creation. So I believe I have a short video here on...
Hello, and
Yes,
welcome to
on
Castle
monism.
the channel about theology and beer. Today we're looking at another one of the theisms, and today we're looking at pantheism. Now, as always, we're going to have a quick look at its name, then we'll have a look at the definition of pantheism, and then we'll look at some examples of it. So, without further ado, let's go grab our drinks and explore pantheism. As always, let's examine the name itself. Now, watchers of previous episodes in this series will be completely unsurprised to discover that it's derived from ancient Greek, and it comes from 2 different words. Theos, which means God, as we've discussed before, and pan, which a word which means all or everything. So, when you clump those together, the word pretty much means everything God or all God. So, as the word describes, pantheism is the idea that everything that exists is part of God, or that creation and God are one and the same thing, with all the implications that follow on from that idea. In pantheism, the deity that is everything isn't a personal god, such as the beings that you'll find in, say, your ancient Roman or Greek gods, or with their own likes and dislikes and squabbles, or the singular god of monotheism, who's often described as a person in their own right, but rather, it's more of a force of nature or a concept that nature itself is divine and should be revered. Pantheism is a concept which is quite close to another concept called monism, which is another Greek word which means all is one, which in brief describes a reality where everything is just one thing. But pantheism, of course, states that this one thing is God. Both pantheism and monism have been around for many, many centuries, and while they haven't been the driving force behind many religions, the idea has been at least part of their theologies. It's only really been in the last few centuries, in the Western world at least, that pantheism gained more of a definition. So in pantheism, everything that exists is either part of God somehow, or derived from God. So for instance, the thing that makes trees and animals alive is that they have the essence of God flowing through them. Now, with this in mind, it's probably best to dive into a couple of examples of where it can be found. Now, as with all things philosophical, the ancient Greeks get a mention, specifically the school of thought followed by the Stoics, who were pantheistic. Hinduism, with its wide range of concepts, is of course a place it can be found, alongside other types of theism, such as polytheism and monotheism. Nowadays, there are two that I found online, and that's the World's Pantheist Movement and the Universal Pantheist Society, which, as always, I'll stick links in the description for if you want to have a look. Now, it's worth mentioning that some monotheistic religions, such as Christianity, could be kind of seen as pantheistic, as the notion that God is everywhere and flows through everything and sustains creation, but most denominations will assert that God is not part of creation itself, but is distinct from it. This was an issue that the early church faced with a group known as the Gnostics, which is something I'll go into further detail in my church history series later this year. This idea of God being separate is also seen in Christianity's parent religion, Judaism, and it can also be found in Islam. The general idea, of course, is that the universe needs God to exist, but that God exists separately from time, space, and creation. So, quite often, pantheistic views are discouraged or outright rejected. So
it's kind of the main thing with pantheism, and you can even see at the end of his conversation, he talks about how some people can confuse what Christianity teaches for pantheism, but it is very clear that God is a separate being. He is not part of this world or not part of this connection. He is over this world and in all of it. So, to look at that, let's look at some Bible verses here. Can I have a volunteer to read Exodus chapter 20, verses 1 through 3?
Then God spoke these words: I am the Lord your God, who brought you up out of Egypt, out from the land of Egypt, where you were slaves. You shall have no other gods besides me.
Yeah, so we have the very beginning of the Ten Commandments here in Exodus. The next one is Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4. Up here, which is nice and short here, but it's...
Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one.
Yes, so again, Moses speaking to the Israelites and telling them, Hear, O Israel. Here, so, simple question here. First one, who or what is God?
The Creator.
Yes, God is the creator. He is creator of all things. He is the one who brought the Israelites out of the land of Egypt. He is the one who made them his chosen people. He's the one who created Adam and Eve, who sent the flood. He is a separate person, not part of this world. And so the first root of the New Age movement, all is one, therefore all is God, directly disagrees with the Christian statement of who God is. All right. Keep moving from there to root number 2. Humanity, like all creation, is divine and has unlimited potential. So this idea is basically the idea that since if all is one, therefore all is God, if everything is one thing and that one thing is divine, then you, who are just part of that one thing, have the potential of everything around you. So humanity has unlimited potential because we all can tap into this idea of God. And I have a short video here that I believe was, if I'm remembering correctly, it was titled as Human Potential is Virtually Limitless. And it's just a person speaking through this idea with appropriately epic music behind him. So.
You have no idea what might be possible for you if you got things together and pursued what you should pursue. You don't know how much what's impossible to you right now would become possible under those conditions. It's an unknown phenomenon. And like I've watched people who put themselves together across time, incrementally and continually, and they become capable of things that are not only jaw-droppingly amazing, but also sometimes metaphysically impossible to understand. And so we don't know the limits of human endeavor. We truly don't. And it's premature to put a cap on what it is that we are, what it is that we're capable of. And so you're already something, and maybe you're not so bad in your current configuration, but you might wonder if you did nothing for the next 30 years except put yourself together, just exactly what would you be able to do? And you might think, well, that's worth finding out, but of course that's the adoption of responsibility. And one thing I've also learned over the years, because I've been curious about this battle between meaning and nihilism, and I mean, I could see for a long while the rationale in nihilism and the power of the nihilistic argument, but it occurred to me across time that despite that the power of the nihilistic argument is more powerful than naive optimism, but it's not more powerful than the optimism that is not naive. Because the optimism that is not naive says it's self-evident that the world is a place of suffering and that there are things to be done about that. And it's self-evident that people are flawed and that there's things to be done about that. And then the non-naive optimist says the suffering could be reduced and the insufficiency could be overcome if people oriented themselves properly and did what they were capable of doing. And I do not believe that that's deniable. I think that human potential is virtually limitless, and that there's nothing perhaps that's beyond our grasp if we're careful as individuals and as a society. And so I think that there's no reason for nihilism, and there's no reason for hopelessness, and there's no reason to bow down before evil, because we're capable of so much more. And I think that you can easily, you know that first, because you're not happy with who you are, and you're ashamed and embarrassed about it, as you should be. And you know it because if you look out there, you see people who are capable of doing great things, and you know that we're not giving it our all. And still we're not doing so badly, And so you might wonder if we devoted 90% of our effort to putting things right instead of 55% of our effort, or maybe even less than that, you might wonder just how well could things be put together.
So, it sounds very optimistic, very straightforward, of just like seeing the future and human potential and these ideas, but the focus is on what we can do to fix ourselves, and that's it. We have the power to move things forward. So let's look at a couple of Bible verses that are related to this idea of the human potential. So the first one will be Romans chapter 3, verse 23.
All have sinned and fall short of the glory of God.
Right. The next one will be Isaiah 64, verse 6. And these are some familiar ones there, but I can read this one. All of us have become like something unclean, and all our righteous acts are like a filthy cloth. All of us have withered like a leaf, and our guilt carries us away like the wind. So, the question I have here is, what is humanity's potential apart from God?
We are dead in our trespasses.
We are dead in our trespasses and sins. Then what's interesting is the speaker in here has a moment where he kind of clicks on the law, where he says, you're ashamed of who you are and where you are right now, as you should be. And there's a moment where we're like, yes, as we are dead in our trespasses and sins, we are responsible for that. But his entire focus is on, if you just focus on yourself, look what you can do. And we know that's not true.
The phrase he used a lot in there was two words. I think.
I think.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
think. Mm-hmm. So do I. Now, everybody's got an opinion and we all think. Mm-hmm. But it's not a matter of what I think. It's a matter of what God says.
Yes, so what God says and what is true. It goes back to the idea of relative truth that we talked about last week. The idea that my truth is my truth and your truth is your truth. And if they don't agree, that's okay, as long as I follow mine and you follow yours.
But if we go back to what you had as your first Bible verse, which is all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. And we know that the wages of sin is death. Mm-hmm. And Paul says we're all dead in our trespasses. It doesn't matter. It's kind of like walking up to a corpse and saying, what would you like for dinner? Why don't you go out and pick up a pizza? He's not going to be able to do it.
No.
And so a lot of his, like Tim was just saying, is I think I can do this better. He's the little engine that could. But the problem is his engines are all broken. You can't make it up the hill because your engines don't work. And so without Christ as our center, we have no hope.
Yeah, exactly. Without, like I said, apart from God, humanity's potential is nothing. We've been so broken.
And to listen to him, he says, I think. And then another word he used is wonder. Mm-hmm. He wonders. He doesn't know. I mean, there is somebody who just thinks and he wonders. He's not somebody who has the answers.
Tangential thing, there was a wedding I went to a couple years back where the pastor, not of our synod and things about any synod that I know of, but the way his sermon started was, "I don't know about you, but I believe." And I was very concerned from that moment onwards about the sermon. But, yeah, so, yeah, that's a key thing of the New Age movement as well, is this I think, I wonder, I'm not certain of this, but I feel it, so I'm going to push forward into it. So, going to root 3, humanity's basic flaw is its ignorance of divinity and oneness for all things, or with all things. So, again, if humanity is limitless, if we are divine and everything is one, the real problem, why we have problems on this earth, according to the New Age movement, is we haven't realized that we're all connected yet. That's what's missing, is we just need to realize what really is happening, and then we'll work. There won't be this many mistakes. When you run into Christian writers who are very influenced by the New Age movement, they will shy very strongly away from sin. They will say mistake instead. You make mistakes. Or they might say failure, but even they shy away from that as well. Usually it's you made a mistake. Because a mistake puts the weight of blame off of you. It's something you did wrong, and as soon as you know what to do right, then you'll be fine. Instead of what sin truly is. Looking at this, ignorance of divinity and oneness for all things. I'm going to jump straight to the Bible verses here, simply because this flows naturally off it. So the first Bible verse we have here is Genesis, chapter 6, verses 5 and 6. And Andrew, can you read that for me?
The Lord saw that the wickedness of mankind was great on the earth, and that all the thoughts and plans they formed in their hearts were only evil every day. The Lord regretted that he had made man on the earth, and his heart was filled with sorrow.
Right. So then we have Psalm 51, verse 5. It says, "Certainly I was guilty when I was born. I was sinful when my mother conceived me." And then we have 1 John 1, verse 8 for a New Testament verse in this as well.
If we say we have no sin, we deceive ourselves, and the truth is not in us.
So looking at those Bible verses and thinking about root 3, what is the basic flaw of humanity?
Sin.
Sin, which is from our beginning. This time we have been infected from it from conception, from the moment that our parents conceive us. It isn't some mistake, it isn't some lack of knowledge of divinity or of oneness. It is the weight of sin, of there are 3 things that in the Old Testament sin can be defined as. Sin is missing the mark, so not doing what you're supposed to do and going off base. It is crossing the line, it's trespassing, it's doing the wrong thing, and it is rebelling. It is refusing to follow God and going your own way. Those are the 3 words that in Hebrew can be translated as sin, and those are these separate meanings that they have as well. And so sin encompasses all of that, and that's more than just a lack of knowledge about divinity or about oneness. All right. Keep moving forward to root number 4 then, which is that humanity's only need, therefore, is transformation, the awareness of divinity. So, the only thing that we need as human beings is to be aware of how powerful we truly are, how connected we are with the universe, or how much our potential is. That big speech by the person from before would be enough for some people to fix their problems. That's a little bit of an oversimplification, but it has that idea.
Yeah, so I'm going to say something controversial here.
Yes.
I don't think point 4 would be bad had it not gone past the first sentence.
Humans first need, therefore, is transformation?
So humanity only needs, therefore, transformation, the awareness of the divinity. So what they're saying here is they're saying that, we need to recapture this and move forward.
Yes.
My argument would be that the world would be better if we would look at everybody as brothers and sisters in Christ.
Oh, certainly.
Imagine if we've said, in Christ you are a new creation, and therefore I can forgive. You know, that's me. I can forgive because we're brothers and sisters in this sense. But that's not what they're going for here.
Transformation as in being our old Adam being drowned in the waters of baptism and the new man rising again in us, and the awareness of divinity being aware and the knowledge and faith in our Savior Christ and in all that he has done for us. This is correct.
And I think that's why we have to be careful when we hear our friends talk about these things.
Yes.
That we always follow it up with, what do you mean by that? Mm-hmm. Don't assume that they come from the same background you do. Yes. You're coming at it from a very Lutheran conservative background. So when they're talking about, well, all humanity needs to do is have an awareness of divinity. Well, I could get behind that unless you start to define it a little bit further.
What do you mean by divinity and what do you mean by awareness even? Is it simply believing that you yourself are divine? Because then we can't agree. But is it actual knowledge and faith in the actual divine Lord? But another way that they have it, that is a common buzzword that you'll see in other places, is become the best version of you. It's this idea of transformation and moving forward and becoming something more than what you are, becoming this connection to divinity. And again, I had this, the become the best version of you was a little bit of a joke in seminary when I was there. And I had a moment where I'm like, well, and similar to Pastor Freeman, we could get behind this idea because the best version of ourselves is a child of God, is a baptized, believing Christian. That is the best version of every person out there. But again, I'll go back to another bumper sticker that we have here. This idea of transformation or the awareness of divinity. What this bumper sticker says is, we are not human beings having a spiritual experience. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. So it has this flipped idea of what we are and what we think we are right now is wrong, but if we have the true awareness, then we'll be right, and then we'll be good with the world. And this, we're going to have a big aside on Gnosticism in just a little bit, but a lot of these threads keep track of these things about being a spiritual being with a human experience, of needing some sort of knowledge to move forward. All of these things will be tied back when we talk about Gnosticism in just a little bit here. So, let's look at some Bible verses again, because those are always good to go back on these things. So first is Deuteronomy chapter 8, verse 3. So I'll read this one here. So he, that is God, humbled you and allowed you to be hungry. Then he fed you manna, which neither you nor your fathers had known before, in order to teach you that man does not live by bread alone, but man lives by every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. So this is the verse that Jesus quoted to the devil in the desert when he was being tempted. Our next verse is John chapter 6, verses 32 to 35. And this is Jesus speaking to a group of Jews who are speaking with him there.
Jesus said to them, Amen, amen, I tell you, Moses did not give you bread from heaven, but my Father gives you the real bread from heaven. For the bread of God is the one who comes down from heaven and gives life to the world. Sir, they said to him, give us this bread all the time. I am the bread of life, Jesus told them. The one who comes to me will never be hungry, but the one who believes in me will never be thirsty.
And then we're going to go back to one of the verses we saw just a little bit earlier and go a little past it as well. This is Romans chapter 3, verses 23 to 24.
All have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, and are justified freely by his grace through the redemption that is in Christ Jesus.
So looking at these verses and remembering that Root 4's idea was that our need is transformation, the awareness of divinity as defined by the New Age movement as the knowledge that we need to know that all is one, all is God. What does humanity need?
God.
God. Just like in Deuteronomy, we live by every word that comes from the mouth of God. John says, Jesus says, I am the bread of life. He who comes to me will never be hungry. He who believes in me will never be thirsty. Yes.
We have a question from the peanut gallery out there.
Yes.
Patricia Brees, she writes this. I am confused, Vicar.
Okay.
Are they putting themselves on the same level as Christ?
Oh, yes. To some extent. Many people who are very strongly in the New Age movement will show some sort of respect for Jesus and say that he was a great spiritual teacher, that he was someone who was very strongly connected to these things, that he very much was someone you should trust in and work towards. But they are saying essentially that every human being could say, I am the Son of God, in the same way that Jesus said, I am the Son of God, because we are all connected to divinity.
Do you think that causes, or the idea of all of this, it seems like it's a minimizing of the need for Jesus.
Oh, yes.
Right? And so how do we talk to somebody and get them to see their need for Jesus if they're speaking in these broad strokes like this?
There's a lot of difficulty with that. Some of the big things here is just to work with them to show that some of these broad strokes that they're saying simply fall apart. It's like the idea that all that humanity needs is or that the only problem that humanity truly has is a lack of knowledge of their oneness with others, falls apart when you connect it, when you read through history, when you look at what people, human beings, do to one another and around one another on a day-to-day basis. And it takes a certain level of denial, which you simply has to be worked through at some point or worked around to look at all of human history, or even the highlights of human history, highlights for lack of a better word, and say, oh, these people just didn't know what they were doing.
Well, it's secular, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So the Greeks, everybody always admires the Greeks in philosophy, and where's their civilization now? Right? Mm-hmm. So it didn't work out so well for them, right? So not saying knowing philosophy and being, able to figure these things out, or thinking you're pretty elevated isn't a thing, but it seems like even like Judah. Think about Judah when they thought they had it all figured out,
mm-hmm.
and they no longer needed God because they were big enough and strong enough on their own. What happens when they go without God? It all collapses below them, right? And so I think that you can see that this is not like what's the title of this book or this chapter? It's
Old Lies for a New Age.
Old Lies for the New Age. This is just the devil replaying the same old record time and time again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the history of every civilization is the history of being based on something other than God, or eventually basing themselves, in the case of the Israelites, on something other than God for their prosperity and growth. And that always fails them. It always falls apart. Running through every civilization, eventually it twists and breaks and fails. And so this idea that humanity's potential is limitless, that if we just did the right thing for long enough, we would get to where we need to be, history disagrees.
I think, too, that would be personally depressing. I know after listening to the man, we were optimistic, but
yes.
What if you keep trying and it doesn't work? Which is where most people end up. Yeah. I think that could be a good end, too.
That's the second thing, too. Yes, and one thing that I think it was Luther who brought it up when he's talking about if all you hear is law, which is what the New Age movement is at the end, is law. If you just keep working, if you do the right things, you have to do it this way, and this way is a little broader, but it's still, you have to do it this way, you have to work this way, then things will be good for you. If all you get is law, you end up with one of two different kind of people. You end up with the people who are depressed, who are despairing, because they know they can't live up to the standard that they find themselves having to live up to. And so they despair. There's nothing left for them. They can only fall apart. Or you come into the people who lie to themselves in one way or another, who move the goalposts, who say they're good enough, who, as long as they look good to those around them, it doesn't matter what they actually do in their own minds. One or the other comes out of all pure law preaching with no gospel.
It always strikes me how much of the New Age movement has seeped into some of or not our churches, but Christian churches.
Mm-hmm.
Think about some of the the preachers that are on TV or the internet that are saying, if you believe it, you can transform yourself, you can bring that thought to fruition, and God will bless you with it. You know, but it's all, you have to change the way you think and the way you approach things, and then it'll all work out. And this is what some Christian churches are trying to peddle now, because it's a popular idea.
Fix it yourself instead of let God fix it.
That's right.
You're going to keep trying until you get it right.
And you find it specifically if you watch your Sunday mornings. I can't tell you how many shut-ins I've visited that they watch these things on television, and they're alarmed by them when you come and visit them. They say, "Pastor, can you explain to me what this guy was talking about?" And they're downright shaken at times because of what they're hearing on television. And it's this new age stuff that's coming out. You know, did I not do it right in my life because it didn't happen this way?
Yeah, because if you work it the way, that goes back to, well, it's again the idea of going back to one of the indicators from last week, the idea of good vibes or good energy, of the law of attraction. If you think the right way, then good things come to you. Unfortunately, the reverse of that comes into a lot of people is this idea that if bad things are happening in your life, it's your fault because you didn't think the right way. And so it runs into that problem, which is very difficult for it to overcome or for anyone to live through. But we can keep on moving to route number 5. Transformation can be produced by a wide variety of techniques. It goes back to the idea of relative truth, that there are several different ways to reach this enlightenment, to find the divine in you. And Locke suggests several of them, or has many ideas in here. Let me see if I can find the right. Oh yeah, the following systems: sensory isolation, a flotation tank, or sensory overload, biofeedback, chanting, psychodrama, hypnosis, and self-hypnosis. Sorry, this is on page 12. Meditation of every description, especially the many forms of yoga, feverish dancing, magical rites, human potential seminars, dream journals, primal therapy, rebirthing, syncretistic religions, body disciplines, self-healing, A Course in Miracles, and more. And other New Agers could add guided imagery and visualization, therapeutic touch, sleep deprivations, endurance tests, firewalking, pyramidology, use of crystals, astrology, and channeling of spirits. Almost anything is acceptable that will trigger a mystic or psychic experience powerful enough to cause a person to reject his or her former beliefs and perception of reality.
It's interesting. One of the things that you hear today, I'm sure we're all familiar with conspiracy theories and things like this, is look at one of the people he mentions here. He mentions, do you see A Course in Miracles?
Yes.
That was written, if you're not sure, that was written by a lady by the name of Helen Schumann.
Okay.
And she wrote it because she was dictated by God, word for word, what to write down. And God told her that you need to have this oneness, this awareness of yourself. And she started selling this course to these New Age people at courses or at these conventions and things. And it is actually a very occult type thing. It's very, very nasty, almost, I would say, devilish in the things that she's proposing. Very anti-Christian.
On a side note, or connect with those ideas, the sensory deprivation tanks, that's something I've seen a few people do in like YouTube videos and things, and they always come out with this thing of like, oh, I had this really weird experience. They always have this moment of like, I'm not sure how to work through it. And so obviously, like, the way your mind works when you're separated from all senses, when you're floating in somewhere so that you don't have a sense of touch, a sense of hearing something, of seeing something, like, your mind starts to make things because it's so used to hearing things and blocking them out, or seeing things and working through them, or feeling something touching you and just kind of working that out of your awareness, that it starts creating new things for you to experience so that you can feel somewhat normal. If you ever look at it, there's a thing on the world's quietest room. I forget where that is. I think it might be in Chicago. It's somewhere in the U.S., I thought. But it's a room where if you go in, people can't stand to be in there for very long because their ears are so used to hearing things, and with everything being cut out, you start being able to hear your blood pumping through your body. and it's just such a difference to people. Yes.
2 things. You don't need to go to a quiet room. Just try helping Fiona with math, and you can feel the blood pumping through your ears. And 2,
No, who's having a problem? You or her?
me. Me. All right.
Well, she's the one that's
There's
on
some
the honor
things.
roll.
There's some things that he has listed here, like the martial arts, and he gets into it later, yoga and things. So my question is, should our watchers or our Bible study attenders be concerned if their grandchildren are in martial arts down at the local, next to Target, at the little corner store, and they're taking martial arts lessons?
Since I took karate all through high school, I hope not. But with that, I will say that there are often spiritual elements to that. In fact, as I got more up the belts and the ranks in the martial arts area that I was, the person I was there, he was, I believe, part of I'm not sure what church he was, but it was not Lutheran for it. But we had back and forth, and I had a back and forth conversation with him in high school, as this is an adult much older than me, about whether or not my baptism, which I was baptized 2 days after I was born, whether or not that was a legitimate baptism. Because he was saying it wasn't, because I didn't go up and say it, because I didn't choose it. And so there can be elements of that, but I wouldn't say that's in all martial arts, practices. And that's not the main point or main part of martial arts, for example.
So specifically, what should we be watching for if our kids or grandchildren are in martial arts, that it doesn't seep over into theology?
I guess the biggest thing is the why of what they're doing. Like, what they're doing, the techniques that they're doing, breathing exercises, just exercise in general, what they're using, how they're using it, and what they're learning and everything. That is all right, but but why they're doing this. So why you are in martial arts. For a while, one of the good things that'll say, and if you're in martial arts for any period of time, one of the good things that'll come up is to let the person in martial arts know you never use this to attack. You're not we aren't teaching you how to hurt people. We're trying to teach you how to use this properly. But the more you go into the reasons why and the whys and wherefores, the more you need to start questioning. So that's what I'd say is the why and the philosophy behind what you're doing. So when they start going from this is how to throw a punch, and they start going to this is why you should do it, or this is why you're doing all of this, that's when you should start asking questions. It might still be okay, but you should start asking questions. So, along with that, an idea of living your truth is another one with the relative truth idea. As long as you're living what feels true to you and what seems to work for you, then you're going towards transformation. Let's go straight to the Bible verses. This one as well. We're going to Matthew chapter 7, verses 13 and 14. This is Jesus speaking. I believe it's right on the Sermon on the Mount, or right near there. So, it's enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leads to destruction, and many are those who enter through it. How narrow is the gate and how difficult is the way that leads to life, and there are few who find it. The other one is 1 Timothy 2, verses 5 and 6.
For there is one God and one mediator between God and mankind, the man Christ Jesus, who gave himself as a ransom for all, the testimony given at the proper time.
All right. And I gave you guys a question that had a Sunday school answer last week, and I'm giving you another one this week. What is the only way to be saved?
Through Christ.
Yeah, through Christ. That's the only way that transformation in the Christian sense can be achieved. It is the only path. It is the narrow gate. There aren't a wide variety of techniques that lead to salvation. There is only what Christ has done for us. So, as with many things, this idea that you can live for yourself and that you can transform yourself through a series or number of techniques is immediately rejected. The only path forward is Christ. There's a book that is very well liked in the Bethany area, and there can be a variety of opinions on it, but you run into it over and over again, called The Hammer of God. In one of the stories there's a person who's it's all about pastors in this one parsonage in Norway, but Norway or Sweden, one of the two. But this person, he's reading, he had to read a sermon because he had to grab it for there, but he's going through it, and the whole point of the sermon is that if you try to take a path to heaven yourself, that path never ends. But Jesus is the end of the path, and he comes to us to end it for us and bring us to that end. So this idea of transformation, going through a wide variety of techniques, is the idea of walking the path yourself. You're trying to walk your way up, you're trying to find your best way, but that path never ends. We can never reach the end point ourselves.
You're forever going to be trying to get it right.
Trying to get it right, trying to get it right.
But Christ has made it right for us.
Yes, he has already done it. It's the old thing of the law says do, the gospel says done. And without the gospel, it is never done. All right, so we have the last root here, root 6. Personal transformation is the springboard to global transformation. So as long as there are enough people who transform, who get this enlightenment, this realization of their divinity and their oneness with all things, we're eventually going to reach critical mass, and that is the point where the switch is going to flip, and suddenly everything is going to be better. I have a very short video here on one sort of idea on what this is, where the age of Aquarius, as we mentioned before, this is where at least some of this idea, especially in the occult section, comes from. And I have a very short video here on someone's idea of what this is going to look like. They're saying that they're going to predict the future for the next 100 years. So that's what this is about, is they're predicting the future for the next 100 years. Oh, I didn't have the video. Oh no. Sorry about that. So they were predicting the future for the next 100 years, and what they were essentially saying here was that in this future, humanity is going to leap forward, technology is going to jump forward, we're going to get genetic engineering up to massive levels, world peace is going to be achieved, interstellar travel, we're going to connect to other planets, and finally we're going to connect with aliens. That was kind of the big thing, was like world peace is going to be established, illness and disease is going to be eradicated, everyone's going to be able to live forever, and we're going to have interstellar travel in the next 100 years.
I've met aliens. I've been to California.
No.
Yeah.
Oh boy, oh boy. But
I thought you were going to say Rockwell.
there, so yeah, it's this idea of that, and it depends on the optimism of the person you're talking to and how they're going, whether they're on the occult side or the more humanist side. But there is this general idea in the New Age movement that as soon as enough people reach this point, world peace is going to be achieved, at least, or everything is going to be better. We're going to improve. Everything is going to become so much better than it is now. So, looking at that, let's look at John chapter 16, verse 33. This is Jesus speaking to his disciples just before he was crucified.
Fiona looks like she's very excited to read that.
All right.
I have told you these things so that may you have peace in me. In this world you are going to have trouble, but be courageous. I have overcome the world.
Right. The next one is James chapter 4, verse 4.
Don't you know that friendship with the world means hostility toward God? So whoever wants to be afraid of the world makes himself an enemy of God.
Whoever wants to be a friend of the world, yes, makes himself an enemy to God. And so, looking at those and this idea of global transformation, everything's going to be better, what will be the state of this world right up until the last day?
Sinful.
Chaos.
Sinful. There's going to be some chaos. We're not going to be, unfortunately, like, there will be periods where things will seem better. There will be periods where things will seem much worse. But until the end of the world, sin will be with us. That will be something that we will have to work around and work against. So, we can go from here to chapter 2, and it looks like I've got 20 minutes tops to finish up with chapter 2. So, After we went through chapter 1, chapter 2 is a history of and reasons for the New Age. And in it, Lockhart identifies three main threads that provide the basis for the modern New Age movement. He has the Theosophical Society, which was founded by Madame Helena Blavatsky and perpetuated by Alice Bailey. Those are a lot of the idea of this movement forward and of connecting theology and philosophy and the humanist side, well, more humanist and occult. The mental healing practices of Phineas Parkhurst Quimby, which is attached to the Church of Christ Scientist. In the modern day, again, more occult, more faith healing, these ideas, and secular humanism as put forth in the Humanist Manifesto 1 and 2, which one of the key tenets of the Humanist Manifesto 1 and 2 is this idea that there is no greater being. Humans are the most we can manage, so we're going to have to save ourselves. He goes on to talk about the needs and stressors that the New Age movement is responding to in our own time, the many reasons why it has become so popular. So he talks about why people have caught on to this movement, what it is that they are losing, what it is that they're missing, what is going on that people need to connect to this. So, before we keep going on that, question 9a, I'm asking two things here, and he mentions Gnosticism very quickly, but I wanted to check before we go farther, what do you know about Gnosticism, if anything? This strange word that starts with a G but doesn't have a G sound.
This hand in here.
That's where agnostics came from.
Close. So, it mentions a little bit. Gnostic comes from the Greek word gnosis, which means knowledge. So, agnostic is lack of knowledge. They're saying, I don't know. So.
Gnosticism is the opposite, where you get the special secret knowledge.
That's one of the things, a special secret knowledge idea. So, I have a short video here on, and I do have this one, good. A short video on Gnosticism, and it's one of those great videos where they're drawing the whole time that they're talking about it. So it's on Gnosticism and the idea of what Gnosticism was, especially in the early church.
Gnosticism was a competitor of Christianity in the ancient world. It is a way of looking at reality that pulled many ideas from the Stoics and the Platonists and other ancient philosophies, and it saw itself as the way of true knowledge. Gnosis means knowledge. Gnosticism took many shapes and was very popular in the ancient world. Gnostics of all persuasions agreed on three basic points. Like Platonism, this imperfect world is separated from the supreme being, the One, by a series of levels, like rungs on a ladder. Depending on the Gnostic, there were anywhere from 3 to hundreds of rungs to be climbed. Like Platonism, the soul is perfect, or nearly perfect, and is trapped in the physical, fleshy body. It must be freed to return home to the world of spirit. Each rung of the ladder was an obstacle that had to be overcome by knowing its true and secret name. Gnostic leaders instructed their followers in the secret passwords that allowed access past these guardians to the heavenly world. The Gnostics saw Jesus as a Gnostic guide who came to give secret knowledge of the passwords to heaven. They saw the canonical Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, as baby food compared to the many Gnostic Gospels, which contained the real meat of Jesus' message. Gnostics saw the Creator God as a lesser and evil God who created this nasty place in which we find ourselves. Jesus came from the higher, true, and good God to overthrow this lesser God. But the lesser God killed Jesus. Most people are sleepwalkers who do not know where their true home is. Gnostic Christianity was a powerful rival of Catholic Christianity and was seen as a great threat by the early church. Gnostic Christianity presented itself as true Christianity. It demanded not simple faith, but intellectual understanding. It claimed to be not for the many sleepwalkers, but for the spiritual elite. It was not for believers, but knowers. For many in the ancient world, Gnostic Christianity offered a more attractive and complete system than Catholicism. It was more intellectually stimulating, exclusive, and claimed to guarantee salvation through its secret teachings. The early church battled Gnostic ideas on many fronts, and we still see the influences today in the approaches of some to Christianity.
So, the three things, so that's a lot on the Gnosticism and the idea of the time. Three things that we have here for them is this idea that physical body is evil and the spiritual is good. Sorry.
I see.
Oh, there. Yeah. The physical body in this physical material world is evil, but the spiritual things, the soul, the intellect, are good. And then there's a special knowledge that's needed to escape from the material world. Sometimes this was a special name, sometimes this was just certain knowledge, certain ideas, but there was some knowledge, secret knowledge, that you need to escape from the spiritual world and go up the ladder, so to speak. The last one is that most people lack this special or spiritual knowledge. That this is only for the elite, the people who can really grasp it, who can get farther. Most Gnostics, because of this idea that the physical was evil and the spiritual were good, they generally were people who were very ascetics, for lack of a better word. They didn't deal with, they didn't eat very much fancy food, they didn't drink, they didn't do much in terms of, like they would exercise, they would do all these different things because they didn't want to interact with the material world. Very few of them would flip the switch and say, because the material world doesn't really matter, we can do whatever we want. But usually they would go against it. And so these are kind of...
Would that be a minimalist?
Yes, a minimalist. Not all minimalists would be Gnostics, but a lot of Gnostics would be minimalists. This idea that there isn't, like, none of this really matters and a lot of it is evil, so therefore, or maybe all of it is evil, so I want to deal with as little of it as possible. These are kind of the three things: physical evil, spiritual good, this special knowledge, and that the special knowledge was only for the elite, and only for the few people who could really get connection to it. Yes?
One of the big problems with Gnosticism and its relationship to the Christian church, even today, is the Gnostic writings are what we would consider pseudepigrapha, or they are completely unacceptable. And people like Athanasius actually had them ordered to be burned. And the reason for that is, listen to this. This is a quote from the Gnostic Gospel of Thomas.
Oh, yeah.
And tell me what's wrong with this. Jesus said, "Split a piece of wood and I am there. Lift up a rock and you will find me there." That sounds like what Vicar was talking about earlier, right? That God is everywhere, or everything is God. Now listen to this, he goes on. Jesus said, "If your leaders say to you, 'Look, the kingdom is in the heavens,' then the birds will be out there before you. If they say the kingdom is in the sea, then the fish will be there before you are. Rather, the kingdom is within you, and it is outside of you. The Most High does not dwell in houses made with hands. The kingdom of God is inside you, within you, and all about you, not in buildings made of wood or stone. When I am gone, split a piece of wood, and I am there. Lift up a stone, and you will find me there." What does that say to people that go to church to find the means of grace?
They don't need them.
Why not?
Yeah, because he's everywhere. Just split a piece of wood and he's there. And
But you're going to creation.
Mm-hmm.
But that goes back to what he was saying earlier, that everything is God.
Yeah, all is God, and
That's worshiping creation.
Yeah.
yep, that's what it ends up becoming and ends up being for. So, going with question 9b, why do you think this ancient heresy, Gnosticism, is so enduringly popular? Why do you think it keeps popping up and keeps being around in people's minds? Because it's here again, you'll see people who directly say that they're following the Gnostic Gospels here and there, or at least they'll be connected to those ideas.
History Channel.
History Channel.
Around Easter, you watch, you'll see, find out about the Gnostic Gospels, the lost Gospel of Mary Magdalene, or things like that.
I don't even watch it. That time of year, that's when you stay away from that stuff.
Yeah.
That's right.
But with that, why do you think people keep gravitating back to it?
Ignorance. They don't know the God's word. And the desire to be their own God.
That's a big part of it.
They want control.
Yes. Control. I think another big thing that connects Gnosticism, especially with things, is it makes you feel special because you have the secret knowledge. You have this important information.
Now, where does the secret knowledge come from?
You have to get it from other people, or maybe the universe gives it to you, or maybe you connect it through other things. Yes,
It's a direct hand-me-down from Jesus.
there's that.
So in the original Gnostic Gospels, which I should say were dated several hundred years after Jesus left, they were published under names like the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary, and things like that, because that way they had a name attached to them. But an example would be in the Gnostic Gospel of Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdalene is with all of the disciples at the Last Supper. And Jesus, in this gospel, excuses all the other people, and he takes Mary aside, and he breathes into her this special knowledge. And the point is, he removed the other people and gave it just to her. They would also say that's why Jesus took just a few people up on the mountain for the transfiguration. This is when he's imparting this special knowledge to these people. And so that's why John refers to himself in the Gospel of John, according to them, as the disciple whom Jesus loved.
That was a confession.
Right. But John, in that gospel, is writing in response to early Gnostics who were saying that he wasn't one of the Gnostic gospel, or he wasn't one of the Gnostics. He didn't have the special knowledge. So when he refers to himself as the disciple that Jesus loved, it's to show people that Jesus also opened not just a secret knowledge to just a few, one or two, but he made this confession to everyone, and that everyone has the ability through the Word of God to have faith. That it's not limited to a direct passing of knowledge.
I'd say another reason I can think of, and this just might be for another thing, is that Gnosticism makes for a fun story if you divorce it from everything, because I was talking about this earlier as I was kind of going through this, and with a couple of my confirmands or my catechism students, while I was explaining how Gnosticism works with those different levels and going up the ladder and stuff, someone said, "Oh yeah, that's like a video game." And there's a little bit of that in it, of like you just keep going to the next level and to the next level, and there's a sense of progression of moving forward, and we really like that as human beings. We like this idea of, oh, I got the next thing, and so then I get a reward and I keep moving. And so it kind of feeds into that in our own minds as well. But all right, so with that idea of Gnosticism and that interlude to Gnosticism, we're going to look at Lockhass's statement on page 18. So it's this idea that he has up here, which is in the middle, I believe. Yes, the middle of page 18.
Can I comment on your what do you call it? It's fun. It's like a video game. This is from 1 Corinthians 13:11. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. I understood as a child, and I thought as a child. When I became a man, I put away such childish things. So if you think about it as a video game, put it away now. It has no place in what we teach and confess.
What is fun is not what we're focused on. All right, so the first full paragraph of page 18 here. So, for many people, scientific solutions cannot deal adequately with these crises. So, cultural, sociological concerns, the whole thing he's talking about, the idea of the problems of day-to-day existence are largely unsolved. Yet the only hope that many people can envision comes from humanity. Humans are responsible for what we are or will become. No deity will save us. We must save ourselves. This is from the Humanist Manifesto 2. So kind of respond to that idea and how we would respond to this thought, or whether you've seen this around, or what's going on with this idea that many people have issues with scientific solutions, but the only thing they can think of comes from humans.
Create a tree. Our best scientists can't create a tree. They can't cause it to grow.
Not from nothing.
Yeah, they have to have something. But God created everything from nothing.
but that's how you can run into the reason I single this out to is that you can run into those people who agree that, to go with Shakespeare, there's more in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. This idea that there is more going on than this material world. Those people who say all that exists is what you can touch and see. All that exists is what I can interact with my five senses, and nothing else matters. There are people who completely disagree with that, but still say, but what can come out of us has to come from human beings. And so that's where you run into with the New Age movement is there is a denial, or at least a disagreement, that that science will solve all of our problems, but they still don't go back to God. They go back to humans. Achievement moving forward there. So, we can move forward from that. Let's look at Hebrews chapter 5, verses 11 through 14. Someone be willing to read this for me?
We have much to say about this, and it is difficult to explain because you have become too lazy to listen. In fact, though by this time you ought to be teachers, you need someone to teach you the beginning principles of God's Word all over again. You have become people who need milk, not solid food, for everyone who lives on milk is not acquainted with the word of righteousness because he is still an infant. But solid food is for more mature people who have their senses trained by practice to distinguish between good and evil.
So we almost see a little bit of, again, Gnosticism stole or borrowed or changed around from every single religion they came into contact with. A lot of it was from Christianity, but they bought from everything else. And so you can see a little bit of what they took from here with the idea of the Gospels are baby food, and then we have the real stuff. And they have but the question I had for this, just to kind of wrap up on what we're talking about with this, the New Age movement and what it's moving forward, its origins, what it's talking about. What kind of spiritual food is the New Age movement giving to its followers? So,
Empty calories.
empty calories. That's the way I was thinking of it. It's kind of junk food. It's spiritual junk food. It can be fun to read through. It can be entertaining, but there's no meat to it. There's no weight to it. It doesn't give you what you need. And it's going back to the thing. We've decided apparently that the New Age movement is video games and junk food. No, but. But there can definitely be some feelings to that of it doesn't have the substance. So to move forward to this, what we're going to do next week is we're looking forward into, we've seen kind of the origins of where they're coming from. We're going to do chapters 3 and 4, which are on the occult side of the New Age movement and the secular side of the New Age movement. And remember as you're reading through these that this isn't two different camps. These aren't two things that don't speak to each other and fight with each other, though sometimes you'll see them fighting with each other. It's more like a spectrum where these are the two sides and people usually end up somewhere in the middle. Connection there. But the occult one is more about channeling, about spirits, about energy levels and crystals, whereas the humanist side is more about humans' so-called unlimited potential and what we can do to build ourselves up to become like God in both cases, but in different ways. All right, so let's end today with the Lord's Prayer. Our
Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. So, Vicar, before we go, can we give a shout out to some of our folks watching?
Absolutely.
Everybody say hello to Dave and Janice Oberhaus.
Hi.
Patty Brees. Marlene Curtis and Sandy Honeman.
Hi.
And then we've got Judy Clayman is watching. Christine Cole and Julie TG are watching from home.
Oh.
And then there's a couple of you folks that I can't see because you haven't commented your name. So say hello sometime and we'll give you a shout out.
Sure. But for all of you, the ones we could say and the ones we couldn't right now, thank you very much, and thank you everyone who is here in person. And hopefully we will see you all next week.